Alright, welcome back to our video series on landing on the moon with Kerbal Space Program. This is the third in the series. Video 1, just to recap, we built our rocket and went through some tips and tricks how to do that. Video 2, we took that rocket, we put it into orbit, and then we got our trajectory towards the moon set up, so we're now flying towards the moon. So here in number 3, we're going to get to the moon, get our orbit going. We're going to land, and depending on how long that takes, we may do the return in the same video as well. So I'm going to go back out the map mode. We're still having this little squirreliness here. It's just a weird glitch with Kerbal Space Program. I'm going to mention one more mod here real quick, because you'll notice here, and this is part of the base game, but your orbit, when you're in a regular orbit, it's blue. When you have an encounter, it turns this kind of orangish color, and then when it says you're on an escape trajectory from wherever it is you encountered, it turns purple. And in this case, it's not putting us back in orbit, it's just flinging us out into space. Well, Kerbal Alarm Clock, and I'll click on it here, it's a really handy mod because you can set alarms for a variety of things. If I zoom way out, you'll see these question marks are asteroids. We're not going to deal with those. If I want to fly to Duna, here's Duna. Now, I actually, where it's positioned right now, I can't realistically fly there right now. If I had a ship ready to go, I couldn't get there because of its position. What I would need to do is wait for Kerbin and Duna to orbit a few times until it got more of an angle, about 45 degrees from where it's at now. Not exactly 45, but it doesn't matter for this description. Well, I don't necessarily know when it's going to do that unless I just hang out here and warp and just wait for that to happen. But I can set alarms in here that'll just automatically tell me when that's going to happen. In fact, it has built in. It just knows where things are at, and I can do that. The other thing I can do is, let's say, hey, it's going to take a few hours of in-game time for my ship here to get to the moon. Well, in the meantime, I could be launching other missions. Well, I could set alarms to say, hey, make sure to stop warp or to just alert me when this ship is about to reach this destination or this thing's going to happen or whatever it is I want it to do. And that way I can do multiple missions at once. So it's pretty handy. But one of the simplest features it adds is I can say, hey, I could do it here. Or they added these little arrows in the game where I say, hey, I just want to get to the sphere of influence chains. Warp me there until I'm 3 minutes out. And what it's going to do is it's going to automatically warp me. Which I could do manually, but then it's going to slow me down before I get there. And then it'll stop my warp when I'm 3 minutes out from encounter. So to save us some time, I'm just going to click on this. You can see here comes the moon moving, here's me moving. And then it slows me down. And then it'll completely remove my warp once I'm 3 minutes out. So if I hover over here, you can see, well, it's hard to see because of this weird flickering thing that's going on right now, but it's counting down from 3 minutes to where I hit that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed up my warp a little bit. Oh, finally got rid of the flickering. Nice. Now you can see the counter going down. And then once I hit that, it's going to change this to show just what I'm going to do relative to the moon. So you can see from here, I'll zoom out a bit. Now all of a sudden it changed. I'm going to stop my zoom, or my warp rather. And what's happened is technically my orbit is still doing what it was before. It was coming out here, it was being influenced by the moon, and then kicking to here and going out. But from the moon's perspective, I'm coming in, I'm actually going to the right here, circling around and going this way. Well, again, you got to keep in mind the moon is moving while I'm doing this. So it's just as the picture was before, it's subtly bending my orbit and then sending out this way. So this, and you can see it kind of shows, this and this are the same thing. If I zoom in here a bit, that blue line that shows up here, that's the position of the moon when I have this highlighted. So it just shows you how much the moon will have moved by the time I get around it like that. But we just want to know relative to the moon now because we're just trying to orbit the moon. So I'm going to click on the moon again. Maybe, if it'll let me. You can double click to do the same thing. I just want to set it as my focus so I can mess with that maneuver. Now if I click on my periapsis, add maneuver, and I'm going to hit parry here just to make sure it's exact. And And then I'm going to do retrograde because it's going to slow me down relative to the moon. And it's going to bend my orbit, or bend my flyby, until it actually puts me in an orbit. And then I want that orbit to be circular. And almost there. Okay. Tune it just a little bit. Alright, so that's just about perfect. So that has me at just a little bit over 10 kilometers, both apoapsis and periapsis, which is what I want. So, now if I look down here, I got an hour and 23 minutes before I get there. So, yeah, that's how far away I am from the moon. So what I'm going to do is, well, rather than click on that, I'm going to manually zoom in, or warp it, because it's always kind of fun to see the moon coming up. So here we are, we're getting closer to the moon. I'm going to switch this to stability assist. It keeps trying to push me to the prograde, but I actually want to point retrograde once I get closer. So we're at 8 minutes, 7 minutes, 6 minutes. Now what's kind of cool is the moon will continue to load and get more details as we get closer. So like we couldn't see all these craters when we were further out, but now we can see all these pockmarks that were on it. It flips the camera mode as you get closer. Sometimes that's a little bit annoying, but so 5, 4, 3, and at 10 kilometers we're going to be pretty darn close to the surface for an orbit, but it's okay, we're not going to hit anything, and it'll make landing a little bit easier. Alright, so I'm under a minute away. Alright, 40 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and take warp down to 1. I'm going to flip this to my maneuver. I could just flip it to retrograde. It's basically doing the same thing. As you can see, they're pretty well lined up. And as usual, it overshoots. And then, alright, we're about 16 seconds. We'll hit our burn and get our orbit. And the camera flips again as we get into orbit rather than a flyby. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cut. Alright. So burn just a little bit too long. I'm now at like 9 kilometers from my periapsis, but that's still plenty high, so I don't care. So I'm going to click this to get rid of my maneuver node. And now I'm in orbit around the moon. And we can see Kerbin out there. We can see the sun. You see a lot more details of the moon. When you get super close, some of the detail goes away, but there'll be some like rocks and things you can see, but they're just kind of procedurally generated. But still looks pretty cool, I think. I think they did a really good job for, as simple as the graphics are, they're still pretty awesome. Alright, now I'm about to go to the dark side of the moon. So here's my position. I could land here if I wanted, but I'd really rather land over here where it's a little bit brighter. One, because it's a little bit easier to see, especially for recording this video, but two, it'll produce a better shadow, and shadows are very helpful when you're trying to do landings because they let you know when you're about to impact. Now granted, I have my terrain altitude here, but if you don't have this mod or you just want a more visual thing you can look at versus staring at this number, shadows kind of help. So I'm going to speed up my warp again. We're going to go through the dark side, zooming by, and then there's Kerbin. Okay, here comes the sun. We're still kind of on the shadow part because you would think this would be more lit up, but I think what it's trying to say is because we're high up, like if we actually landed here, the sun would start going back against the horizon again because now some of the features would be blocking it that are now way under us. So So it's still kind of getting indirect sunlight there. As we get over here, the surface gets brighter, and we're going to go into one of the brighter spots to be able to see. Now you can see here the surface is pretty darn rough. I would not want to land here in most situations. Now sometimes, especially in career mode when you're trying to do science, and depending on where you're trying to land to get science points, I won't dive in that too much. You might need to land on one of these rougher spots, but you want to try something kind of smooth. So, alright, so this is probably good enough. Now, the way you want to land is you want to cut your horizontal speed as much as possible. You could set a maneuver node if you wanted, but they're really not necessarily that. You want to try to flat terrain, so I probably should have already been stopping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit retrograde. But then what I'm going to do is, see, because I have with this mod, it tells me my vertical and horizontal speed. I'm just going to kill my horizontal speed. So once I get kind of retrograde, I'm going to put it to stability assist. And I'm going to hit my engine. And I'm just going to try to kill the horizontal speed. Now if I go back out here, you can see it's already got me impacting the surface. But I want to try to get this so it's totally open up backspace so I can get to my ship. So it's essentially totally vertical. I want to be in a complete vertical free fall. Or pretty close to it. You don't have to do it that way necessarily, but I think this makes it easier. Now, if you don't have a mod that's telling you this, you can just watch your retrograde vector and you wanted to get it to point as straight up as possible. So horizontal speed is... Oh, and I started actually pushing myself the other direction. I'm not going to worry about too much from here. I'm just going to flip to retrograde. Now, one of the weird things is if G is what you need to deploy your landing gear, but by default it's already considered activated, and that's really for jets and stuff and airplanes that you will start out with it deployed. So if I hit G now, my little light goes off that indicates, but nothing happens to my gear. But if I hit it again, they go down. Now obviously I still have this big fuel tank and engine here that are in my way, but since I still have fuel in them, I'm going to use them to help with my descent. So I'm going to power up a little bit because of the altitude I'm at, and you kind of get a feel for how fast you want to be going. But of course towards the end I want to be under 10 because that's the impact rating of my landing gear, 10 meters per second. But you don't want to, like, you know, be that slow from the beginning or you're going to waste a lot of fuel. So, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and slow down a bunch because I'm getting pretty close to the surface. I'm under 1,000 meters from the actual surface, even though this is 3,500. That's not measuring the surface. Now, I want to get rid of this bottom part because I can't land on it. Or, I mean, I could, but it's going to make me top heavy. It's going to cause me problems. I want to land on this part. I'm just using this so I don't have to burn my little bit of fuel here. But I don't want to just separate while this is burning, because otherwise it's just going to keep burning and I won't be able to control it, and I'll be sitting on top of it and there's very little I can do. So I want to do, and you don't have to do it quite this way, but you want to, I'm slowing down to, I was actually pushing myself back up, but I'm going to cut the engine, then separate, then I'll hit my engine again when I need it. So that way it makes sure they push away and aren't going to run into each other, because this is still burning, it's just going to cause you problems. And you can see some of the rocks that start to appear up, and I'm still way the heck up. So the shadow, here's my shadow. It blew up on us. And that shadow is going to help me tell how close I am, so I'm getting pretty darn close. So I'm going to try to stay close to 10. I'm actually going to slow down to even less than that. Probably close to 5, if not 3, by the time I impact. Alright, so here's the shadow. And you can see I'm on a slanted surface, so if I didn't have these legs, I'd probably tip over. Oh, and I still kind of tipped a little bit. Oh, and apparently I had deployed my... Didn't mean to do that. Did I maybe have them on the same button, or am I just pushing extra buttons? Oh, must just push an extra button. So So we've landed on the moon. All right. So now I'll put Jeb here on EVA. And I'll crawl him down the ladder. And then you hit space to let go of the ladder. And as you can see, even though the ladder didn't go all the way to the ground, it was still plenty tall. And I can jump, run around, I can jump in low gravity. I can hit R to do my little backpack thrusters here and lift off and fly around if I want, but I'm not going to play with that too much. So the other thing you can do is, again, this is where you could take some surface samples and things for science, which you can still do here, but it gives you nothing because you don't need it because it's really not part of the sandbox game. But what I can do for fun is plant a flag. And this actually would be something that would give experience to my Kerbal in the career game, but again, he doesn't need it. Then you can name the site. You can type plaque text. I'm just going to cancel that. Of course, the flag is backwards that way. So, yay, Kerbal Space Program. So, and then I can look around and, oh, it's like directly above me, so it's a weird angle, but there's home. See if I can run out. Yeah, well, there you go. There's Kerbin. It's kind of cool when it's like near the horizon. You can kind of see it better, but anyway. So, let's go home. So now I'm going to get back on this guy. Walk up the ladder, hit F to grab it. I'll push W to climb. Once I get up near the hatch, I can hit B to board. I don't need the ladder anymore, so I'm going to hit 2 to retract it. Now we're going to do the same thing here with launching as we did on Kerbin. This is our east 90 degrees. We want to go that way. So I still have stability assist on, which is good. And then I don't need to power up all the way because, again, you don't need a whole lot of power. So what I'm going to do is hit shift and then tilt that way. And again, I only need to get to about 10,000 apoapsis, but I want it to be kind of far out so I could do some maneuvering. I'll hit G because I don't need my stretch down anymore. It doesn't really matter if I leave them down, but it just looks cooler if you retract them. I want to pay attention to what my prograde's doing because I'm not using much thrust, so I'm actually kind of sliding sideways a little bit, so to speak. I'm not actually going the way I'm pointed. I'm going more horizontal than that, which is fine as long as it stays above the horizon. If it dips down, then I'm in trouble. And we'll check our apoapsis height. We'll wait till it gets to about 10 kilometers. Maybe give a little more juice. I'll kind of flatten out here. You can see I still have plenty of fuel. Alright, so I'll go a little bit above 10. I'll go ahead and cut our engine. I'll go back to map mode. Here's my apoapsis. I'll click on it. Add maneuver. Make sure I'm at the apo. Slide this out. Oh, way too big. And again, this doesn't have to be exact. You just don't want to burn fuel for no reason. Alright, close enough. So, I got a minute. A little over a minute, so I'll zoom in, or I keep saying zoom. I'll warp a little bit. Alright. And I only have to burn for a little under 5 seconds. So again, just doesn't take a whole lot of energy to do things around the moon. Because it has less mass, so less gravity, and no atmosphere. And go. Alright, so I burned a little bit too much. We put our apoapsis at 14, but who cares? Alright, so we're in orbit of the moon. Now, how the heck do we get back to Kerbin? Well, I could burn here, so I'm burning straight towards the Earth. that would get me kind of there. Or I could burn here and try to do like we were looking before, where hey, that gets my orbit towards the Earth, but you can see it actually puts my orbit around, or I keep saying the Earth, the Kerbin. Like it makes this giant thing. What the heck? Well, again, you got to keep in mind that we are already in an orbit around Kerbin that matches this gray circle. We are in that orbit. We are also orbiting around Moon, but the Moon is doing that orbit, and since we're in orbit around the Moon, this is our orbit. So what we really want to do is slow down relative to Kerbin. So if I move this over here, it tightens things up quite a bit, because now I'm burning essentially this way where this thing is going. I'm actually more burning towards Kerbin as we originally talked about, but it's moving my orbit this way, which is going to get me closer to Kerbin, and then I can make some adjustments. And this takes a little bit of tweaking again. That's where a tool like this can help. And what I want to do is I want to get inside the atmosphere enough that I will do an aero brake, which basically means I don't want to come in so steep that I'm going to burn up, but I want to come in enough so I don't have to like get in another orbit and then do decelerate. I just want to get in the atmosphere and it's going to do the work for me. So this has me at an altitude of 36 meters. I'm going to get closer to 3,000, or excuse me, 30,000. So I'm going to do a little tweaking here. Alright, I think that should probably be good. Problem is if you're too shallow, yes, it'll slow you down, it'll shrink your orbit, but it won't do it enough, and then you'll come back out of the atmosphere and you'll keep doing orbit. If you're coming too steep, you'll be going too fast, and you'll either burn up in the atmosphere, or you'll still be going too fast, and you'll smack in the ground and blow up. So that maneuver should get us what we want. We got 29 minutes till we get there, so we'll hit our warp. A little bit faster. Oh, it's not going to let us again because their altitude. Alright. So 10 minutes. So one bad thing about low altitude flights is it restricts how much you can warp. Alright, so okay, we're about 30 seconds. We'll go ahead and flip this to maneuver, so it'll orient our ship right. The other thing, just to notice, I've been doing all this stuff with the solar panels out. That's usually not a big deal, but they are very sensitive, so any kind of minor impact or getting in the atmosphere, they'll just fall apart. So you might want to retract them, but it just depends. And we just have to burn for a few seconds. Alright, and this thing keeps flipping around because the maneuver node changes. If I'd have just locked on, I'd have kept going, of course, but no biggie. So we'll go back out here and see how we did. So here's our Moon trajectory. It's basically we're on a escape velocity from the Moon. Really what it is we slammed on the brakes and the Moon's going to keep going is what happened, because our orbit around Kerbin now, as we're still going this way, so we're still going in this general direction from left to right, but now we're going slow enough that we're going to be captured. Now, let's put us at 32, probably close enough, but I'm going to go ahead and just fine tune it just a little bit. Probably not necessary, but I'll get us pointed prograde. I'll do a couple taps. Alright, that's probably plenty. So, go ahead and start zooming. Watch the Moon fall away from us. So bye-bye moon. Alright. So for the sake of time, what I'm going to do next is we'll go ahead and warp to there. I'm going to kind of manipulate the... won't let me manipulate once I hit that button, I guess. So you can see I've already kind of fallen along this track. So I'm kind of simultaneously in this orbit and this orbit at the same time, because they're all affecting each other. And again, this is saying that I'm going to come over this way. I'm actually not. I'm following this, but from the moon's perspective, I'm going to be that much further away in 2.5 minutes. So from this orbit perspective, I'm not suddenly going to scooch in a little bit, but from the moon's perspective, I'm going to be that much further away in that amount of time because it's going away from me. Okay, so we had our sphere of influence change. Does a little bit of squirreliness there, so now we're in our orbit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here. And again, one of the other nice things about Kerbal alarm clock is I can click there and go warp here. Alright, so, oh, and that's interesting, a little bit of a graphical glitch there. May fix that as it thinks about it a little bit. But anyway, so now we're getting pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and warp a little bit more. Oh, boom, there it goes. It fixed its graphics. Just enough time to load. Usually I don't have that problem, but again, I think the recording software is causing me some issues. So, 70 kilometers is where the atmosphere starts. I could retract these panels and all that, but really I'm just going to get rid of this thing. It's not going to survive re-entry anyway. So what I'm going to do is flip back to retrograde. And then I'm at full battery power, or we'll be here shortly. And then I'm just going to go ahead and separate. So I'm going to hit my space bar. Now you'll see how it's kind of jerking around like that. One of the weird things, and it's just a glitch in the game, but sometimes when you hit stability, it's like it can't quite figure it out. So it tries to do several things at once, and it'll just eat your battery like crazy. So at that point, I'll usually just kind of let it go. If you do caps lock, controlling yourself, it'll give you more sensitive controls so you're not all over the place. We're in atmosphere anyway, so this is actually an aerodynamic thing. So I'm not controlling anything, and it's kind of staying in this direction. We're coming in pretty darn fast. Usually would like to be slower than that, usually about 2,500 meters per second. So usually wouldn't even start seeing these plasma effects until we're at a lower altitude, but we are hauling the mail here. There's the moon, we were just there. Now this little bar that's flashing, this means that we're starting to potentially take damage. We're basically getting too hot. So maybe it would have made sense to put that other heat shield on, I don't know. I'm going to hit my heat meter here, which again is part of that engineering mod. And it says my maximum skin temperature, or critical skin temperature, is 2,400 degrees, and I'm a little over half that now, so I was getting kind of worried about it, which is what this meter is telling me. When it starts getting red like that, you need to start lowering, because this is slowly creeping up, just kind of jumping everywhere. This says critical thermal percentage is about, it's kind of bounced between 60 and 65%, so not good, but I should be okay. My altitude keeps creeping down. This also tells me my speed and speed of sound, basically, and right now I'm at Mach 8.5, which is not a slow speed by any measure. That red bar is creeping up again. I'm at still about 60. It's actually starting to go down, so I'm fine. Again, not ideal. I probably maybe should have come in a little shallower or grabbed a heat shield, but I'll be fine. it looks like we're going to be landing. We're not going to do a splashdown of water. We're going to land on land. So again, this is where knowing your terrain altitude versus your sea level altitude can be helpful. Because what happens is your parachute, you have to manually deploy it, but you don't want to deploy it too much above 250 meters per second, or it'll just go too fast and it'll basically get ripped off. And won't do you good at that point. But you don't want to deploy it too late, because it takes a couple seconds for it to fully deploy while you're still falling. So if you hit it early, but not too fast, it'll basically just create a little bit of drag and won't actually fully deploy. And then once you hit to 1,000 meters, if I right click on it, it tells me it's unsafe to deploy, but it's set, and I can adjust this, but it's set to deploy at either 1,000 meters or at 0.04 atmospheres. But you want to make sure you hit spacebar before 1,000, because it takes about 500 meters for it to fully deploy. And if you wait too long, it won't fully deploy and it'll smack in the ground. End of mission. Alright, so getting down below 20,000 meters. Alright, this is starting to cool off. You can see it's both from the sound and visuals. Our re-entry heat is starting to dissipate. This is starting to turn white, which is just the Mach effects. And then again, if I right click on the parachute, it still says it's unsafe to deploy. And I think I can just keep it there and it'll tell us, but I know once you get to about 250, let's see exactly where it does it. Did I get hit risky at one point? Oh, maybe you just got to keep clicking on it. No. So yeah, now it flipped to risky, and now safe. So I'm going to wait just a minute. We're still 5,000 above. We're going to land in the desert mountains, it looks like. Well, it says we're in the grasslands, actually. A little biome thing here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and deploy my parachute. It's not actually going to do anything until this hits 1,000. It's 1,000, it deploys out, and by the time it's fully deployed, I've lost like almost 700 meters. And actually, about 750 meters by the time I got to a safe landing speed. So, there's my shadow right there. These are just rocks, but they kind of look like shadows. And slow descent, which is good. Sometimes if you have a lot of extra stuff on here, you'll still fall too fast and bad things will happen. And plop. Parachute goes away. I'm safe on the ground. I could EVA again if I really wanted. But we'll put it back on the ship. Then I just need to recover, and all I got to do is go up here to recover vessel. And they'll take me back to the Space Center, and they'll tell me how well I did. I'm not sure how it does it in Sandbox anymore. So this Frontier, he got a bunch of ribbons and medals for doing things. That's just part of this extra mod. It just adds a little extra flavor. It's just kind of fun. And it says, hey, I'm ready for next assignment. If I had been playing in career mode, if I had gotten any scientific research done, it would tell me how much I got. You actually get money back for recovering parts, and would tell me how much money I got back. But and then here, it would actually tell me if I gained any experience for the crew. But in this case, none of that's relevant because we're in Sandbox. So it just says he's ready for the next assignment. So that is it. We have successfully landed on the moon. This third video has gone a little bit over the time I was planning, so we'll go ahead and cut that off. But hope you have good luck on your next attempt to land on the moon and all your other future missions in Kerbal Space Program.